It can work both for us and against us. With your Influence and Success Insight, I'm Bob Burg. The word ego typically has a negative connotation. That person really has a big ego, don't they? Wow, what an ego. Or if that person's ego gets any bigger. In other words, we tend to think of the ego as intrinsically negative, as though an ego is something possessed only by self-involved narcissistic people. But really, when you look at ego in its literal sense, it's neither good nor bad, it just is. How it manifests is what makes it positive or negative. Ego, according to dictionary.com, is simply the I or self of any person, a person as thinking, feeling, and willing, and distinguishing itself from the selves of others and from objects of its thought. That's it. Your ego is that part of you that is aware of you being you, separate and distinct from all other people and things. Sure, we're part of a bigger whole, from family and friends, community, country, and universally. Religions, teams, companies, groups are a large part of humanity. And none of this in any way conflicts with the idea that we're individuals, each of us pursuing happiness according to our own unique individual desires and values. Your ego, that part of you that recognizes your individuality, when properly understood and directed, can bring exceptional value, not only to you and your loved ones, but to society at large. In this case, ego serves. However, just like with emotions, the trouble appears when the ego is directing the show rather than controlled and consciously directed by its owner. When it's our ego doing that, we act out of weakness, make poor decisions, and suffer the consequences. When in a potentially difficult interpersonal situation and our ego and the other person's ego are both out of control, well, this is where communication breaks down and where influence and persuasion is non-existent. In fact, just the opposite occurs. And this negative aspect of the ego happens much, much more often than not. What makes things far more problematic, both for ourselves and for others, is that we're not even aware this is taking place, and is a significant part of pretty much every conflict that is not successfully reconciled. To partially quote Ray Dalio, founder of the Bridgewater Group and author of the book Principles, I believe that the biggest problem that humanity faces is an ego sensitivity to finding out whether one is right or wrong. Wow. The ego sensitivity regarding whether one is right or wrong. This comes into play so often that, and you already know this, it will even keep people from making decisions that they know are in their own best interest, because then they'd have to admit to possibly having been wrong. We actually covered this in the previous video regarding genuine influence principle number 5, let go of having to be right. It's all about the ego, the negative aspect of such. As human beings, while we're so often driven by our emotions, those emotions are steered by our egos. Ignore this powerful element of human nature, both in yourself and in others, at your peril. So much of genuine influence is successfully dealing with two egos, ours and theirs. I love how Les Giblin put it in his 1956 classic, How to Have Confidence and Power in Dealing with People. He wrote, "Human relations is the science of dealing with people in such a way that both your ego and their ego remain intact." You can navigate this successfully by first respecting the fact that there's a good chance their ego will come into play. Yes, yours will as well, but you know to be aware of yours. They most likely don't know to be aware of theirs. So it's up to you, as the genuine influencer, to take this responsibility upon yourself. A good exercise is to notice in every conversation when someone's ego is controlling them and their thoughts and actions. It'll be easy to notice it in others. More difficult is to notice when it's your ego controlling you. At least that's the case for me. Yes, you need to be in control of your own ego and to help the other person to not be controlled by theirs. Remember, when it comes to genuine influence, about 95% of the time, being able to move a person to your side of an issue comes down to how you make them feel about themselves. And their ego will practically always play a role within that 95%. With your Influence and Success Insight, I'm Bob Burg. Make it a great day.